Phytech, and what we do is a little bit different than soil monitoring. We are doing actual on-the-plant sensing. We are letting the plant tell us what is going on and what irrigation is needed for that day to optimize our irrigation. So how do we do this? We do this by looking at our stalk diameter with our double-sided dendrometers. This with a daily shrinkage and recovery. We look at this information. We use this to see the general plant health, the growth pitch, and we look at EC values to look to see what actually the plant is requiring for that day. Here it shows us the list on our graph, our plant stalk diameter with increasing growth values. We see the high growth maximal daily shrinkage, and the recovery on the bottom, what we get with is the maximum daily shrinkage that our system is detecting on a micron level every day. Therefore, we take that calculation and we present that to our growers on a simple plant status index for them on our apps or anything available. We go from red to 0 to 20 in stress, all the way to optimal 60 to 80, no stress, all the way to saturated, meaning you are situated in a place where you're yield affected, you will not be yield affected. We present this on our system with a phone or on your computer to make sure that you are looking at a constantly on view demand, real-time views. What we see here as well is after taking all our algorithms, we are able to do a 4-day plant status forecast or prediction. What that takes into effect if currently the day of today, we presume that there's no irrigation, we could go out to 4 days and make that prediction with all the variables, weather, ET values forecasted, to make sure that you are able to turn on that sprinkler whenever you need to do, whenever it is best situated for that plant when it calls for it. Instead of waiting for your soil moisture to be adequate or not, we're looking at what the plant is telling us. We do this in simple and pivots or anything nature. We look at NDVIs. We get 2 locations per site. We set up our logger. We get 3 plant sensors for 2 locations and 1 soil sensors that we pick up for rain events and such. Here we have our first picture, our logger with his satellite GSM, tracks all information from our radio signals, sends it up to the cloud, and therefore we are able to tap into our pivot systems and grab high pressures, low pressures. It learns through your whole irrigation process what your pressures are, where it's actually GPSing, where your arm is facing, if it's on and off. And therefore, we also know if you're going counterclockwise, clockwise with your system, and it learns on a 9-day basis, after 9 days, what your optimal operating pressure is at that point, and you will receive alerts. Here we go with our plant sensors. They actually go on the plant themselves. For instance, on our soybeans, on corn, and our cotton plants. On corn, we usually like to go on V3 to V4. And we start analyzing your information and what the actual plant requires. This is kind of what you see in the field. We are tough enough for pink, and you can see anything out there in the field of green, obviously, our pink flag where our sensors at. Each sensor is tagged with a GPS location, so we are able to track its individual basis of where it's at, and if a grower would like to see where it's at, he could walk himself to it, or if we need to service it and remove it at the end of the season, we can go back to it and we won't lose our sensors. Our app, we are technology based, obviously, so on our On our system, we go on to the web, and it's a web format. You can see the total action of your farm. So if you have more pivots, it gives you a record of what pivot each pivot's looking at, and it gives you a status for each field, if it's running or not. Same thing with your mobile. You get the same thing on your mobile application on the go. If you wake up in the morning, see the phone like myself, and the first thing you see is how your field is doing. With this, when you bring up on the app or on the computer, you can see which one has more yield affecting stress on a color basis, the same wise. It will always affect the lowest plant. If one of the plants is saying, or one of the locations saying it's in yield affecting stress, it will show up red and so forth around your whole operation. And then currently, if you're running or not, or where you left off with that pivot arm. So with this, a lot of what we're helping our growers is, when do we actually start kicking on that pivot? When have we accumulated enough growing status that we're showing that when we see the first signs of stress, that we should be able to kick that pivot on and know exactly when to turn it on, and not estimate of when you need to turn it on actually. With this, we are tracking our moisture mid-season. If you see the blue lines, we are tracking every irrigation depending on when you turn it on, the length of time it goes on, and during mid-season we can see the critical time when you need to kick on that on. As you see here, it's a variation of 6 to 7 days of when we see the plant stress and when they kicked on irrigation and how it affected it. So the farmer was able to turn it on every 7 days, make sure before he got into stress that he could carry on. Late season, or silage or anything, just to finish it off, we see where we can see is the actual time before you need to shut it off. We present this once we accumulate enough growing days where it's completely saturated with a dark green color. When we accumulate enough days and we see the stalk diameter declining, we know that we are seeing the plant shutting down and it's going more into maturing. So therefore, we are shutting off our pivots. Our growers know not to waste another round of going around. Same thing here. That's what we're showing. You see the soil moisture probes on that. We see some irrigation events and finish the crop off. Here we're showing with the late season irrigation, how it's affecting the plant status and how much actually you're overusing water. We can calculate with the complete saturation, and therefore we can tell if you ran extra on the pivot, that wasn't needed. Pretty much on the accumulation of the plant statuses. At that time, once we hit tassel as well, we are doing yield estimates based off on our calculations and NDVIs, and we are estimating total yields for the areas on your maps. And we got several applications on your mobile app. For this, we'll be doing their own sensors for, I'm guessing, their own login and everything to check it out. The app is very intuitive. It will show you your whole area, where it's at. It estimates where, it goes up to see each individual field, and then your irrigation per day on a timely fashion. And pretty much we're here in Nebraska, Kansas, and row crops in Colorado, corn, everything you name of, hemp in Colorado. Questions? Yes, sir.
Curious how you're estimating yield. Is it will giving you previous yield data? Are you looking at previous years?
So we're looking at NDVIs, a attached with our algorithms on our plant sensors, with stock diameters and everything like that, trying to estimate with your accumulation of plant status. Yeah, we're coming to plus or minus 5, depending on some growers out. We had some where hail knocked everything out, so a late hail really knocked us over, and they lost pretty much everything, but we're coming really close to our predictions. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Felix.